Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Brecken Branchtrader, and I'm the Senior Editor, Gemstones at National Jeweler. I'm pleased to welcome you to the latest episode of My Next Question, National Jeweler's webinar series, sponsored by RDI Diamonds. Today's session is hosted by our Associate Editor Lenore Fido, and features Ben Congleton, CEO of live chat provider Olark. Before I turn it over to Lenore and Ben to get the webinar started, I just wanted to let our attendees know that if they have a question, they can type it into the Zoom Q&A box. I will be back on at the end of the discussion to facilitate the Q&A. Also, today's session is being recorded and will be available on the National Jeweler website this coming Friday, March 19th. Now I'll turn it over to Lenore and Ben. Thank you.
Thank you, Brecken, and thank you, Ben, for joining us. How are you doing today?
Yeah, thank you, Lenore, for having me. I'm doing great. Doing great.
Good. So I was just going to start off by letting you introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Ben Congleton. I'm CEO and co-founder of Olark Live Chat. I've been doing this for about 12 years, and we started off as this little tiny consulting firm, this little tiny small business, and realized that there wasn't a lot of good other live chat solutions out there for small business. Most of them were built for big enterprise. They're built for Fortune 500s or for Comcast. And we decided to go out and build something designed for basically small businesses like ours. And now serve about 30,000 businesses around the country.
Wow. So tell me a little bit more about Olark, how you guys got started, what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me share my screen briefly because I think it'll be helpful to kind of illustrate what we do. Here we go. Okay, great. So the basic idea, and you've probably seen a lot of this online nowadays when you're surfing around the internet, right? Is you'll see these little chat boxes in the lower right-hand corner. And so what we've done is we've built a very easy to deploy live chat solution for any business. And the idea is, as you're browsing around websites, whether you're on Brighton or on Lush or on like another one of these websites, a lot of times you have a question as a shopper. And before you buy, you want to get an answer. And so just like someone's walking into your physical store or your counter, a lot of times people want to communicate with you before they buy. And so we try to make that incredibly easy. The idea being, as a customer, you can click on the box as you're browsing the website, so you can keep looking at different items. The customer can say like, hi there, I could use some help buying a gift for a friend. And, and basically a real human being is kind of standing by on the other side to answer your questions. And this typically could be, part of your staff, someone who works at your company. Barbara is amazing. And I kind of warned her I was going to be testing this out. But the basic idea is you can start building that relationship with the customer as they're shopping. And so you start getting that same in-store experience online. We do that for many, many businesses of all sorts of sizes. Lush is one of our customers. Sephora uses us. Brighton is pretty popular, but also like lots and lots of like very small businesses use us as well.
Right. So as you were saying, like I do see this feature on quite a few websites, specifically e-commerce sites where you can buy something. How common would you say it is now for a website to have a chat feature like this?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I was sort of digging around and trying to get a good stat. The stats that I was able to pull for this are something like 70% of consumers now look for live chat while they're shopping. But I think the main challenge that people typically run into this is staffing. It's sort of like, I want to have chat on my website. Do I want to use a chat bot? Do I want to have an actual person do it? Am I really going to be in front of my computer all day to respond? And so I think what you really want is you want something that's a mobile solution so that, you can use it on your phone, or, if you happen to be in front of a desktop a lot, you can run it on a web browser window, something easy to set up. In terms of like actual percentage, I would say definitely greater than 50% of e-commerce sites are using live chat or some form of live chat right now. But ultimately it's a way of building a relationship with your customer. So if you're selling a high value, a luxury item, something like that, you want to be there, you want to build that relationship. And even if the entire relationship is not going to exist over live chat, it's a great way to get the conversation started, maybe turn it into a Zoom call or a phone call or something more lasting.
Right. Yeah, it's a good starting point to have.
Yeah.
So we are actually in the process of redoing our website, which we spoke about a little bit.
Yeah.
That's going to be unveiled tomorrow, which is super exciting.
Yeah.
But through this process, I've learned that it is not always as easy to add new features to your website as you might think.
Yeah.
So what is the process of adding a chat feature like this to your existing website?
Totally. And I completely hear you on that. Like websites have gotten a lot more complicated than they used to be. I think most of us are using some platform. Maybe we're using WordPress or Squarespace or Shopify or an existing sort of platform for our website.
Right.
And so these platforms often either have a way to install plugins. So on WordPress, you can get like a little alert plugin for your website. In a couple of clicks, you can download and install this. For other platforms, sometimes you need to add a little bit of code. For anyone who's ever installed something like Google Analytics, you can copy and paste some code. It's very similar to Google Analytics onto your website. And I know a lot of us kind of use developers and consultants to kind of do some of the more technical work too, or an agency. Sure. Most agencies should be able to install something like this in about an hour or less. Like they like to round up to an hour. It should take them less than an hour to add live chat.
Okay, so it's not overly complicated then.
No, not at all. I think getting something up and running should take you, like, on a technical person, like 15 minutes. It should be, just signing up for the process, copying and pasting something, and bam, now you're ready to go.
Gotcha. So, I mean, given everything going on this year and also last year, I'm sure for a lot of small businesses, budgets are sort of tight.
Totally.
On average, what would you say it would cost a small business owner to add this feature?
Yeah, so the easy answer is probably about $20 per person per month. So you can think of it kind of like adding a phone line or something like that. It's relatively affordable. It's ongoing. It's an ongoing cost. The other half of it is obviously staffing, right? Like who's actually going to respond to these chats. And I think that normally is like the most expensive piece of adding a service like this. But for a small business owner, one, you're not getting a ton of traffic to your website. And the people who do come to the website are going to be pretty qualified. And so what we've talked about doing, and most of our smaller businesses do this themselves, is either they take their existing customer service staff, or like the owner will just sort of, put it on their phone and keep their phone with them. And if, a new lead comes in, they're able to just start having that conversation. And so it turns out you don't really need to hire additional staff to do live chat. In fact, some of our customers, like there's a giant kind of travel agency called Flight Centre UK, which is really big in Australia. And they basically have their people at their front desk staff chat. So they already have all these storefronts around the country. And when there's downtime, there's no customers in the store, they just staff chat that way. And so it turns out it's not so bad just to, create that, additional human touch online.
Right. Okay. So it's not a huge added expense to your monthly budget.
Yeah, it shouldn't be. It should be pretty straightforward. And, admittedly, I would say it's not for everyone. It doesn't, not everyone is going to benefit from live chat, but I think everyone should give it a try, because if you have qualified, people that have a lot of interest in what you're selling, coming to your website, browsing around, those people definitely have questions. And if you're selling like a higher margin item or something that requires a little bit of relationship to sale, so you'll make the cost of the software back in 1 to 2 sales a year. Like it's not a high lift.
Right. So moving to the customer perspective, what is the typical wait time to get in touch with someone when I enter a message in the chat box?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think industry standard is about 48, like under a minute. Like you kind of want to staff so that you can get a really quick response.
Gotcha.
Our team, like you saw how fast Barbara was a second ago.
Yeah.
Like Barbara's just on it. I think we shoot for about 10 seconds, but if you're using your phone, it could be a little bit longer, a minute or two, but you really got to be quick because someone's on your site, they're shopping. It's kind of like they walked up to that counter, right? And they asked a question. There's like a limited amount of time someone's going to hang out there and try to get an answer if you're like, busy helping another customer, right? In the physical space.
Sure. Now, just to clarify, with your platform, I'm speaking to a real person on the other end, right? There is a real Barbara. She's
Yes,
not.
there is a real Barbara. I am, I think a lot of if you're used to dealing with like larger companies online, like if you ever called up like Comcast 1-800 number or something like that, you're kind of used to this sort of automated form of service.
Right.
This
Yeah.
automated form of service, I think, is really great when your goal is to just reduce costs, like cut costs all the way down. But most small businesses, and I would say all of our customers, because we don't really do a ton of that kind of chat bot, like sit between you and the customer type of automation. We have some automation to kind of make your job easier, but we don't do that. Like, hey, answer 50 questions and go through this giant tree before you get to talk to any human being. So our chat's basically built to help get that relationship to happen as fast as possible. And again, not for everyone, but I think for people that care about, those relationships with their customers and see that human touch being valuable, I think it's really critical. I think it's a way that a lot of small businesses like us are able to compete with giant companies, is through those personal relationships with our customers, the people that we serve every day.
Right. So now I've used chat features before and I like them. I am not a big phone call person if I could help it.
Yeah.
But then my dad, on the other hand, he's in his 60s. He's definitely a phone call person.
Totally.
And he might be wary of using a chat feature. So what type of customer uses the chat feature in terms of like demographics?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you can look at this in a couple of different ways, right? And things are a little bit weird now with everyone being, remote in their own home. But like anyone, I would say like millennial generation and below, like people are going to turn to text communication before they're going to turn to picking up the phone.
Right.
Like just it's a fact, like huge buying demographic. Another, and your dad, they're like, he's not the exception, right? Like generally, like people who grew up using the phone, picking up the phone, the call places are still going to prefer phone. But at the same time, when you think about normal times, a lot of people are sitting in offices and a lot of people are doing shopping while they're sitting at their desks, like while they're in their open floor office plan. This happens all the time, right? And then you're not going to pick up your phone like and ask a question while you're at work about this gift you're trying to buy, your partner. So I think so everyone is using chat more or less, given the context that they're in. And the way I look at it is it's kind of like there's a generation that will just pick up the phone and call immediately, right? And just try to talk to someone on the phone. That's actually incredibly hard to staff on the other end. So like if you're a small business and you want to talk to everyone who's going to call your phone number, you're missing calls. You're not always able to go and pick up the phone when someone comes in. It's a lot easier for you to handle multiple chats than it is for you to handle multiple phone calls. And so it's really just, the modern generation's view of how you get that first contact. And it might, you might close the sale entirely over chat. Like that happens all the time. But if it's a more considered sale, or, you're trying to like bring someone in to your shop for a showing, or if you're trying to do something over Zoom, chat is just a really good way to like start the conversation, not necessarily do everything that you'd want to do for that customer.
Sorry, I have a very loud radiator in the background here. So I've had some tricky customer service issues in the past, involving returns or missing items or multiple orders. It can kind of get complicated.
Yeah.
So what kind of problem is best solved by the chat feature? Is it better for your like straightforward, like yes or no questions, or is it able to handle some more difficult issues?
Yeah, I would, I think that's a great question, Lenore. And I think like part of the challenge is not necessarily what is the medium good for, because I think if you think about conversations you've had with your friends or your family using text messages, you can probably communicate almost anything you want using those mediums, right? I recommend for a business, probably the best business use case for chat is front of the funnel. So I want to talk to people that are on my website that are shopping, and I can help them purchase something. That's where immediacy matters a ton. It's where like customer service lets you stand out from the other vendors they're also evaluating. And it's where building that relationship right at the beginning like means that they're going to be coming back and coming to you later when they need help. So that's where I think it makes the most business case sense. From a just general standpoint, I've had very complicated issues with Amazon orders that I've dealt with over chat. Chat lets you scale better than the phone, but depending on probably like the dollars involved, some customers are definitely going to still want to talk on the phone. So I think I would not, I would not say like, hey, like don't get rid of the phone number, go pure chat. But I would strongly consider, anyone trying to reduce the cost of their call center to look at chat, or reduce the cost of just dealing with inbound customer service calls to look at chat, but also to look at it as sort of this lead generation tool, this way of turning that kind of faceless relationship, like in many ways, inhuman website into a place where you start meeting real people and having real conversations.
Right. So just sort of like a different way to connect.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you go to a website right now, or let's think about your website, or I imagine there's probably like an ad sales portion on your website where right. There's different ways of generating new business, and making it easy for those people to start the conversation, I think leads to great lasting relationships.
Right. And now, speaking of those conversations, something that I found interesting was that Olark offers searchable transcripts of the conversations with customers.
Yeah.
So what kind of data can a small business owner find there?
Yeah, I think it's super interesting, right? Like, as like let's say you are the store owner and you have like some of your staff handling some of these chats. Well, first of all, like just being in the store, you can kind of overhear conversations from time to time, but you might miss details here and there. So like one option that a lot of our customers enjoy is just the ability to review everything that's going on. Mm-hmm. And we also provide like the little rating feature so that after every chat, the customer can rate the chat on a couple of different sort of a star scale around friendliness, responsiveness, knowledge, and overall chat. And what that does is it lets the business owner go in and just look at the chats that went really well, look at the chats that went really poorly, and try to like diagnose and figure out how to make things better. So that's another feature that comes in super handy. We've seen another place you can look at, and a lot of this just depends on your volume, right? Like if you're getting just a couple of chats a week, you may have less trend data. If you have many chats, like 10, 5, 10 a day, right. Hundreds a day, thousands a day, start getting more interesting data. But you can also just look through and spot trends, right? Like, oh, everyone's asking about this particular piece. Everyone's asking about these particular gemstones. Everyone's asking right. if like this thing is coming up and in stock. This is information that you might gather directly from your staff. It's just like telling your team, just telling you some of these insights. But when you can mm-hmm. see it next to each other, you can start pulling out bigger trends. Or for example, over a longer period of time, you could imagine doing a search for like out of stock, and you could just look through like every conversation you've ever had about anything that was ever out of stock over the last month or last 2 months, and start getting a better sense for like, oh, this is interesting. Like, how did my team handle these cases? Were we able to turn this into a sale? Or maybe we need to find another supplier for this item because we're often out of stock on it. So there's a lot of insight you can get from actually reviewing those conversations that your customers right. had with you over time. And then there's like kind of just the sort of like simple examples, which is like on the phone, it's hard to remember every little detail. And right. when you're on a chat, if you're asking someone about like, I don't know, like when their wedding is, or, like when their wedding photos are being taken, or just other details that, you'd be jotting down on a notepad. You can capture all this stuff like in specific detail. So if you were to set up a follow-up call, you could easily just review that conversation you had in the past before hopping on that call, and
right.
Probably basically have perfect memory.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Now, is this chat feature only for customer service related questions, or could it have other uses as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think of just any time that someone would talk to someone, basically, like that's what chat is for. So, I mean, I talked a little bit before about sort of you have the lead gen element, the element that like, hey, like someone's on your website, they have a question, you want to start a conversation. To me, that's kind of sales, and customer service / sales is really a lot of the retail type of customer service that people do. Like customer service agents are directly responsible for helping people make buying decisions and purchase items.
Right.
And then you kind of have the return side, which is like, oh, I need something repaired. I need something returned. I need to have a little bit of conversation around this to start capturing some details and know what to do next. And, chat works pretty well for that. We've seen it used for press inquiries. We've seen it used for like mental health services. We've seen it used for like Mothers Against Drunk Driving uses us for just volunteer engagement and asking questions on their website. So like live chat just broadly, I think is it's another medium. It's like a phone for your website basically.
Gotcha. So my last question for you, and this goes back to what I said earlier about perhaps budgets are a little tight this year.
Totally.
What would you say to a small business owner who is sort of on the fence about making this investment?
Yeah, absolutely. So, simple answer is, if you were to go to olark.com or, any other live chat product, for most cases, most will offer you free trial, like 14-day free trial. And so, I would start there. I would say like, you know what, let me try this out for 4 days for absolutely free. And, right. but I'm going to be committed to actually being there and being available and seeing what's going to happen. So, I think, a lot of times it just feels like you're adding one extra thing to your plate, or like there's one extra thing you need to do. I mean, I would just question, like, do you pick up the phone call when people like call you anymore? A lot of times you're getting a lot of kind of salesy junk calls, but you also get real business that way, right?
Right.
The people on your website that are asking you questions are primarily going to be people that are in the process of buying your products. And so you will probably learn, I would say almost within 2 weeks, probably within a month, depending on how seasonal your business is, or what else might be going on in the world, whether it pays for itself or not. And my guess is that most of you, if you staff it, if you are available, you'll find that you're getting, a couple sales a day based on people that are visiting your website that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And these sales may blossom into larger relationships, into larger lifetime purchases and relationships. And the reason we started this thing in the first place was because we were like a tiny little small business. I actually built this little web hosting company in high school, and I didn't have a phone. I don't even know if there's like cell phones weren't really a thing like at that point. So like we're just getting this started, and the thing that allowed us to build that business was the relationships we built with our customers. And so the opportunity just to have another channel for building relationships with your customers is incredibly valuable, especially people that have intent because they're browsing your website. So if you're chatting on like, Instagram, for example, comments on Instagram aren't necessarily purchase intent. Whereas people who are on your website and starting conversations, like this is very high intent kind of business. And so, I would say like sign up for a plan, make a commitment just to go through and staff it for 2 weeks and see what happens. My guess is you'll make some money during that period of time. And at the end of that, figure out whether the effort was worth it. In most cases, I think it'll pay off pretty well. And, there's really no, that's like a zero investment kind of like, did your investment work or not? And then if, you see some leading indicators, like stick with it for a bit. It's, when you think about various marketing channels, you spend so much building your website, you spend so much marketing your website, you might as well spend like a couple of dollars, like, less than $1 a day, just being there for the people who show up and want to buy things and answering their questions.
Right. So there's just very few downsides to giving it a try.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially if you're selling higher margin luxury items, like there's zero to worry about. If you're trying to drive costs all the way down, like if you're like, I don't know, selling like something where your margin is very, very, very low at high volume, like that's when chat starts running into problems, because then it costs you more money to talk to the people you're talking to. But selling any luxury good, like live chat makes sense for everyone.
Gotcha. All right. Well, those are all the questions that I have for you. I really appreciate you joining me today. I am going to turn it over to Brecken to see if we have any audience questions for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Ben and Lenore, for such a great, insightful discussion. And thanks to our sponsor, RDI Diamonds. As a reminder, you can still type questions into the Zoom Q&A box, and I'll try to get to as many as possible. While we compile the Q&A, I just wanted to say a quick word about RDI Diamonds. RDI Diamonds, the selection you want, the quality you need. Thousands of diamonds, that's just the beginning. RDI offers a wide range of services and support to help you succeed. From flexible memo options, a partnership with De Beers Group Industry Services, to generous stock options and cost-efficient shipping. RDI's goal is to provide the highest quality of both care and diamonds to your store. Visit rdidiamonds.com today to learn more. Okay, so let's move on with our listener questions. I wanted to go back a little bit, Ben. I mean, you obviously addressed this in terms of whether or not a business decides they want to do it and just try it out. But before that step even, we had someone who reached out beforehand who was just sort of asking about options available. So I know you're obviously speaking to OLARC, but when they're in the research, when they're in the research stage, would you say that there are even specific features that they should be looking for or things to match with their business that they should consider before they decide to even step into a trial?
That's a really good question. I mean, like, my brutal honesty is I think most providers offer a pretty good like baseline. Like I think like you're probably not going to go wrong for a small business use case. Like if we're talking, if you're like a bigger company, if you're Lush or Sephora or whatever, we could go into more specifics for you. But speaking to the small business owner, I would say basically you want mobile support if you're not in front of your desk all the time. And then you probably want something to kind of like store repetitive answers. Like we have a feature called shortcuts, but there's something called canned responses. So you can start like storing some of the repetitive answers. You probably want to make sure people can leave you a message when you're not around, because, you know, as much as I've been kind of pushing for, hey, like you should be there, you're not going to be there all the time. You don't have a 24/7 call center. So you want some way for people to leave you a message when you're not around. And then, I think like with that basic feature set, you will be able to figure out whether chat is working for you.
It works for you.
And if you want to go push on that a little bit more, you could look at features that say like automatically greet people on certain pages and stuff like that. But I think most of those are only going to get you like a little bit of a bump beyond just the fact that you like have something there so that people can talk to you, and then staffing it, of course. So I think mobile really helps.
Right. Okay, no, that's great. That answered another question, which was sort of looking at, you know, you mentioned obviously always being there and having mobile for that reason. But, you know, if you're a small 1 or 2 person design team, for example, and you happen to both be helping a customer, you know, what are the options for that? Is it simple as like an automated message that can say?
Yeah, I would say, like, I was just, you know, browsing. We have quite a few jewelry websites that use us and small designers that use us as well. And I think they choose to staff us, you know, when they're available, right? And so for most of the time, for some of these smaller designers, they really might just have an email contact form. So the way our software works, and it's and this is just standard, this is not like something special for Lark. So like is when you're not around, you have sort of a little like leave us a message box where they can enter their phone number, their name, and email, and enter a question. And it makes it very easy to find that, as opposed to digging around on the website for the little contact us field. And that's pretty standard. And so like within our software, you know, when you're available, you mark yourself as available. And when you're not, you say not accepting chat. So when you're not accepting chats, then it shows that option to the customer. And so
I see. So it's not just sort of hanging out there while you're busy and time. Okay.
Totally. And there are other people who, you know, think about queuing, like you have people waiting in line to kind of come talk to you. I've never been a big fan of that, because I think that most customers probably would rather just leave you a message than have to wait around for a long period of time.
Yeah,
so we're either like instant or, hey, we'll send you an email and follow up later.
Okay. And we had a retailer who asked to minimize conversations back and forth, especially if someone might need a lot more info. Is it okay to ask them just to call you instead?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing I would say is, you know, we have a like excellent staff like at olark.com. You could just go to olark.com and just talk to Barbara or one of the many other people that are staffing that, like this second in real time. They will be excellent answering your questions. if you have a specific question just for me, you can shoot me an email, just ben@olark.com. I'll respond to it quickly or route it to the right person for sure. We can set up a phone call from emailing me. That's fine.
We had a panelist in another webinar who was sort of a retail expert, and I thought this was really interesting. He was talking about, of course, the importance of a chat, but he also mentioned the importance of taking that little photo of a person's head and swapping it out with your photo or your actual team's photo, something like that, to personalize it. So is that something you would agree with?
I agree 100%. I think anything you can do to personalize it. Like when we were building this thing in the early days, I was like, the one thing I want to let anyone do is customize all the text on this thing. So like every bit of text you see like in the interface, et cetera, that can be on brand. That can be exactly the way that you want it to appear. So you could be like, talk to a jeweler as opposed to, ask a question. It could be like, like Lenore standing by and she knows, everything about these particular items. You can really like kind of customize it, make it your own. Think of it as sort of designing your storefront, basically.
Okay, so down to, for example, colors that you might have running throughout your store packaging and that kind of thing.
100%. Yeah, I think you really want to make it your own.
Right. Okay. And the last question, this was just sort of one of my own as well, but sure. I found it really interesting when you were talking about the insights that you can gain in having all this transcribed and how you can look back in it. So does that include, for example, trends on activity, if that makes sense, so that you can notice trends on when buyers might be busiest and you can say, let me set aside time in the afternoon because people.
Oh, that's interesting. So there's ways of seeing that in some of our reporting, for example. But the thing about our reporting is, our reporting is only as good once you've turned the thing on, right? So if you were just trying to figure out what to do like today, right, and you didn't have chat on your website, but assuming you have some form of analytics, you probably know when your sales are occurring by time of day. And that would be a very good time to staff up. So if everyone's buying in the evening, you probably want to be there. You could also go look at your just hourly website traffic graphs. If you have any way of showing that, Google Analytics is a couple ways of doing that. If you want help there, I gave you my email address, just ben@olark.com. I'm always happy to help on this stuff. Like I was, a tiny little small business for a very long time. And I know like it's hard getting all this stuff sorted out. So and then I guess to speak directly to our product, like once you're up and running, we have graphs that'll show you like when the chats are happening over time to kind of give you a sense for when the staff will help you know when you're getting a bunch of offline messages like when you're not around. And then you might decide like, oh, well, maybe I should staff up that period of time because that seems to be when I'm missing a lot of the opportunities.
Right. Okay. Great. Well, fantastic. I think that does it for all of our questions for now. Thank you again to our guest, Ben, for joining us today, and our editor, Lenore, of course, for hosting. My next question will be back next Wednesday, March 24th, a little bit of a change up in our schedule. That's Wednesday the 24th at 2 p.m. Eastern, where I will be sitting down for a discussion with Dr. Cheatham Lule about a field in which she's an expert, archaeogemology, which is the study of gem materials from ancient worlds. You can read more about it and register at nationaljeweler.com/webinars. I'm dropping that into the chat right now. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us today, and please take care.